The two articles I chose for my research paper are the Clean Air Act and Recognizing the Protection of Motorsports Act, or RPM Act for short. The RPM Act hasn't been around for very long. It was first introduced back in 2017, but the Clean Air Act has been around forever. I mean, it was first enacted back in 1955. But back in 1968 is when the Clean Air Act first required vehicles to meet emission standards. Throughout the years, the Clean Air Act went through many different revisions. In 1990, it went through one revision which significantly tightened the emission standards, and the revision included light-duty vehicles like cars, SUVs, minivans, and most pickup trucks. And in 1990, like during this revision, they set Tier 1 standards, which had a goal of reducing hydrocarbon by 40% and nitrogen oxides by 50%. And the Tier 1 standards were phased over the 1994 and 1996 model years. And then in the early 2000s, they introduced the Tier 2 standards, which required emissions reductions from 77 to 95% in cars and light trucks. And that standard was phased in between the 2004 and 2009 model years. Currently, we are in the Tier 3 standard, which requires emissions to be cut another 70 to 80% compared to Tier 2, which seems like a lot. So, and that Tier 3 is being phased in from 2017 to 2027 model years. But lately, there's been a pretty big focus on motorsports and vehicles that have been modified for competition. And that's where the RPM Act came into place. And like I said, it was introduced back in 2017 with the goal of protecting our right to modify our street vehicles so we can compete in the various forms of motorsports. The RPM Act would amend the Clean Air Act's definition of motor vehicles to exclude vehicles that are modified solely for competition, and it would make the manufacture, sale, and installation and use of defeat devices, or performance parts, that bypass emission controls legal only for competition motorsports. So, I mean, a lot of the performance parts manufacturers could and most likely will be affected by the Clean Air Act, even though most of the pretty much all the manufacturers that I know of, they have to meet 50 state emission standards to be sold legally. I mean, I know some parts are marked for off-road use only, which are for off-road use only, but some people use it for road use. But certain states, they don't really crack down on that. Like we don't have inspections in Indiana, so like states like California where there are inspections, those parts cannot be used for on-road. They're, again, off-road only. But both drag racing and a lot of motorsports like circle track racing, they use vehicles that have been registered for road use, and that's why the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, is concerned with the vehicle's emissions and why they're taking opportunity to have influence. The EPA's concern for emissions does not consider the true impact of motorsports. Their there's a potential negative impact, economic impact that could come from banning all racing. The Clean Air Act does good things for environment, such as promoting plans for pollution reduction to help better our planet. Greenhouse gases are on the rise, and the issue needs to be addressed for long-term survival of our planet. It is important to do our part as citizens of Earth to reduce emissions, but motorsports should not be eliminated as a way to do this. The information for the RPM Act was kind of difficult to find since it's fairly new, but the Clean Air Act was pretty simple, pretty easy to find since it's been around since 1955.